Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda Rose, and today I am going to be sharing with you guys a book tag. Now, I was tagged a very long time ago by Megan from Too Cool for Middle School, but I just never got around to filming the video. And I was looking through all of my YouTube ideas and I was like, wait a second, I never filmed that video, and I have so many books that I want to share with you guys, and so I just figured, why not do it now? It's never too late to share a video about books. And so this is the Netflix book tag. So to give you a little summary, there are a lot of categories in Netflix, whether it be top picks, top recommendations, newest releases. So taking those topics and then using them for books, which is so cool. And so I decided to do that for you guys today. And so let's get straight into it. I'm not going to give you like huge long-winded summaries about each book. It's not a review. It's more of like book recommendations or books that fall into those titles. So, first thing is recently watched, which is the category on Netflix, which means the last book that you read. So the last book that I have read is I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, and you guys had saw that I had posted I was reading this back in March, right before this whole quarantine happened. But I love that book. It's funny. Although I am not Mexican, there are a lot of things that I can relate to being a child of Hispanic parents. And so there are some things that are really funny, but overall I learned so much about Mexican culture, and I like that it's set where she is a high schooler living in Chicago. So I really like that book. Next category is your top picks. Recommendations of books that people have recommended to you. Number one book that I would share is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. I did this as an audiobook. I loved the audiobook because he also included real audio footage from any of the cases that he studied. But I would highly recommend this book. Two of my English teacher friends recommended this book to me, and every single person that I talk to, I recommend the book. I love the way that it is structured. I love the topic. I would highly recommend you guys reading Talking to Strangers, and I also like it because he pulls a lot of his content from historical events. So you get the mixture of like feeding the history buff in you, but then also like this theological way of interacting with people and why we do what we do. So I really like that one too. Third one, recently added, which is pretty much the last book that you bought. Again, the last book that I bought was I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. I have that in an audiobook, and so that was my most recent purchase on that app. Number 4, popular on Netflix. So in other words, books that are popular that you constantly see circling around. One that you've read and one that you have not read. One that I've read was The Water Dancer. I expressed a little bit how I felt about this book on Instagram. I didn't fully research what the book was about, but I know it was on Oprah's book club and I saw so many people posting about it, and so I was really eager to read it. I did enjoy it, but I do think that it left a little bit to be desired, but that is one book that I did read. And then one that I have not read, I would say when it comes to popular books, like all of the Game of Thrones books, I've never read those. I love the show, but I've never read any of those books. Number 5, comedies. So a book that you've read that was funny. I loved Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. I laughed out loud so many times reading that book. He does a great job at being relatable when he opens up the first chapter talking about church and different churches when he was in South Africa, but I've experienced those same churches here in New York. And so it was just really cool because I was able to relate, but then also the way that he explains culture and society and all of the things that happen and how it's connected, whether it be because of poverty or the neighborhood that you live in. He just does a really great job at making those connections and making you just really pause and be like, wow. But then also adding the perfect amount of humor as well. So I would definitely recommend that book. It was hilarious, but then also so serious and so real and so important to read, like all at the same time. Next category is dramas, where the main character is a drama king, drama queen, and I finally have that book here in front of me. This one, Tell Me Lies by Carol Lovering. I actually haven't fully finished this book. This was a recommendation. It's kind of out of the ordinary when it comes to the type of books that I read, but I would definitely say that the main character in this book is dramatic. It is about a teenager that goes off to college, and they end up like encountering this guy who's like head over heels for them. So it's like very dramatic when it comes to love, when it comes to lies, when it comes to sex, when it comes to just like dating in general. I personally think it's very dramatic altogether, not just the character and the way that they describe everything that's happening to them and love, but also just like the book in general, dramatic. Next category, cartoons. So obviously Netflix has a lot of cartoons. This one is a book that has a cartoon character on the cover. And so I want to share with you guys this book called Bro, A Brooklyn Story by Greg Francis, who is actually a friend of mine. He wrote this book, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, and I've recommended it to everyone. I actually even had my school purchase the book so that our students can read it. Greg grew up in Brooklyn. He experienced gentrification in his neighborhood, and so he talks about these things. He includes rap in it. He includes not just gentrification, but growing up as a black man in Brooklyn, what that means, and also police violence and brutality against black men. But there's also like a sci-fi element to it. It's one of the best books that I've read. I'm not just saying that because Greg is a good friend of mine, but I just love the creativity. I love how funny it is. It's a very easy read, but I also just love how Brooklyn the book is. Like, it is Brooklyn through and through and through. And the book is a mixture of his real life experiences along with some things that are not true about his life. But I will say 8 out of the 10 things that happen in this book really did happen to Greg, and I loved that I knew the author because every time I read something, I was able to just text him and be like, wait, did this really happen to you? Did this really happen? And he was like, yeah, actually that did. It was just like, what? I can't believe it. Like, so I have a very emotional attachment to this book, but you can find it on Amazon. I love it. It's called Bro, A Brooklyn Story. Next one, a book that I would like to read again. I would actually recommend Talking to Strangers again. I would want to read that again. Another book that I probably want to read again is like Gone Girl. I really liked Gone Girl. I know it sounds so silly, but I like the way that the book was written. I was intrigued the entire time. So those are kind of like books that I would read again. Next one, documentaries. Yes, and so one book that I would recommend, I've recommended it before, and I will keep recommending it until you go out and buy it. And this is called At the Dark End of the Street by Danielle McGuire. If you want to know about the grassroots of the civil rights movement, the role that women played, the role of the automobile, Rosa Parks and her life and her journey, So much just valuable information, insight is in this book, and I would recommend it without a doubt. The research that was done and put inside of here is so valuable, so important. So if you've never read it, I would highly recommend At the Dark End of the Street for my documentary book. And then the last one is action books. Now, I don't really have any books that are like action-packed. I mean, I have read like the Hunger Games series, and I think that that's like action to the max, you know. I was hooked the entire time, cried during certain parts. I was very invested in those books and the series. But if you want to take a little twist on what it means, so maybe not like action-packed, but a book that requires action from you, I would actually recommend Unhealthy Anonymous. And this book is by Dr. Peter Sulak, and it's titled at the bottom, he's America's leading stress expert. And the reason why I really like this book is because there is like a 12-step process. It says exposing the greatest threat to your health and happiness, and just talks a lot about eating healthy, eating well, and foods that can cause stress, or just like a lot of things in our diet, whether it be sugar, whether it be foods that are high in fat, and how those things can affect your mood, like scientifically proven to do that. He does make a lot of connections to what you eat is connected to your health and your wellness and your well-being. And I really like this book because I like books. I like to be challenged, and I feel like this book challenges me a lot to just be a lot more mindful with how I live my life, what I put inside of my body, and am I consuming things that are hurting my happiness and causing me to stress. So really great book. And then the last one is new releases. I don't have any recommendations for new releases. I haven't read anything when it comes to a new release. I've been more on the whole like webinar kick right now. I prefer just watching someone talk about history versus like sitting down and reading a book. For some reason I just can't get into that space where I can just be isolated and focused on reading a book. I hope I can get out of that place really soon, but for right now, that's kind of just where I've been during quarantine. So I don't have any new releases to recommend, but that's pretty much it. So this is my Netflix book tag. I hope that you guys enjoy. I hope that you check out one of the books that I've recommended here, and I will see you guys in the next